For decades, the freak show was one of the most iconic forms of entertainment. Today, those same shows would be seen as unethical. But in the mid-19th century, society was shifting. People were moving away from rural, family-based living toward a world increasingly shaped by institutions, including organized amusements. It was during this transition that P.T. Barnum brought the freak show into the national spotlight through his American Museum in New York City. And in today's video, we'll explore the 15 unusual circus freaks that actually existed. Number 15. The Eye Smoker. Alfred Langevin was born in Canada around 1885, and no one, even professional doctors, could explain what his body could do. He became known as the Eye Smoker. Alfred could insert a pipe, a cigarette, or even a balloon nozzle into his eye socket and blow smoke or air out through his mouth. It wasn't sleight of hand. It was 100% real. Something in his sinus and tear duct structure allowed airflow in both directions. He played recorders through his eye and performed all over North America, touring with circuses and side acts. It wasn't just a gimmick. He turned it into a routine. In 1909, he got married and kept performing for years. Most people flinched at the sight, unsure whether it was comedy or discomfort. For Alfred, it was work. He didn't ask for applause, just attention and a paycheck. Later in life, his story faded. But anyone who ever saw him never forgot it. A man who smoked through his eye. It sounds totally fake, but it wasn't. Number 14. The Great Zadma. Daniel P. Mannix IV lived a dozen lifetimes in one. He was born in 1911, and then as he grew up, he started as a fire eater and sword swallower, touring sideshows under the name The Great Zadma. But that was just one layer. He had a journalism degree from Penn, served as a World War II lieutenant, photographed wildlife around the world, and once saw herpetologist Grace Olive Wiley die from a cobra bite on camera. He raised wild animals as a kid in Pennsylvania, wrote over 20 books, hunted for zoos, and was a magician, historian, and Oz superfan. His book, Those About to Die, inspired Gladiator. The Fox and the Hound was also his. He even wrote The History of Torture and Black Cargoes, both brutally researched. Mannix wasn't just curious, he lived inside the worlds he wrote about. His circus memoir, Step Right Up, is still unmatched for raw honesty. The man swallowed swords, studied freaks, and left behind a legacy stranger than fiction, one of the circus world's rare intellectuals and actual performers. Number 13. Murderous Mary. Mary was a 5-ton Asian elephant traveling with Sparks' world-famous circus in 1916. Her name became infamous overnight after she killed a handler during a parade in Kingsport, Tennessee. That man, Red Eldridge, was a drifter hired the day before with no elephant training. Witnesses claimed he struck Mary near the ear with a hook while she tried to grab a watermelon. In response, she flung him with her trunk and crushed his head. The crowd panicked. Headlines screamed for blood. The next day, Mary was marched to nearby Irwin, where a crane and a noose awaited her. Over 2,500 people gathered to watch. On the first attempt, the chains snapped and Mary collapsed, injuring her hip. The second time, they succeeded. Someone snapped a photo, an elephant hanging mid-air. That photo still circulates, usually met with disbelief. But it happened. Mary's death wasn't justice. It was revenge disguised as a show. And like the crowd that day, history hasn't completely looked away. Number 12, the Elephant Face Girl. Anita earned the name Elephant Face Girl due to a facial condition that caused severe swelling and asymmetry. Photographs show her with an enlarged jaw, heavy tissue growth, and facial features so distorted that it left people unsettled, but not her. Anita toured with traveling circuses and sideshows in the early 20th century, where audiences came specifically to see her face. She didn't hide behind curtains or act embarrassed. Instead, she leaned into the spectacle, often sitting silently while people filed past to stare. There's little documentation about her medical diagnosis, but the swelling resembled cases of neurofibromatosis or other rare tumor-related conditions. Unlike many in the freak show circuit, Anita wasn't presented with tricks or props. Her presence was the act. She didn't dance, didn't sing, didn't perform. She just existed in a body people didn't understand. Her life, like many others in the sideshow world, was rarely recorded in her own words. But the image of her face still lingers and still makes people pause. Number 11. Dandy George and Rosie. Dandy George, maybe his real name was Albert George Spink, was an acrobat turned vaudeville act, but his fame came with a terrier named Rosie. In the 1890s, George had performed with his brother as Spink and Spink, touring vaudeville circuits. When that act split, he introduced Rosie into the spotlight. The dog danced, posed, and became the star of their music hall routine. Rosie was such a draw that by the early 1900s, she was performing solo gigs with George. But there was a darker side to the fame. In 1919, Spink was charged with animal cruelty involving another dog named Andy, hinting at the possible reality behind the cheerful stage acts. A 1927 short film titled Dandy George and Rosie preserved the memory, likely with a second Rosie, as the original had passed. While George's act faded with time, he was part of that peculiar slice of entertainment history where animals weren't just sidekicks. They were partners, performers, and sometimes replacements. And Rosie, she outshone them all. Number 10. Black Diamond. By 1929, Black Diamond had already killed 3 people. But that didn't stop the Algie Barnes Circus from putting him in their parade through Corsicana. He was a big elephant, once known as Tusco or Congo, chained between 2 females, tusks sawed down, trunk bound with iron. It didn't matter. During the parade, Black Diamond snapped again. He threw his trainer, Curly Prickett, into the air and trampled Eva Speed Donahue, killing her in front of a crowd. People screamed, cars fled, horses panicked. Black was too dangerous to keep alive. Executing an elephant wasn't easy. He was led just outside Kennedy, near San Antonio, and a firing squad was assembled. Some say it took over 170 bullets before he finally fell. Like Topsy and Mary, Black Diamond died not in a zoo or sanctuary, but in front of humans who had once paid to watch him perform. What started as a parade ended as an execution, and the circus kept moving. Number 9. Fred Woodward. Fred didn't wear animal costumes. He became an animal. Born in Toronto in 1882, he found his niche impersonating frogs, mules, parrots, and bears on stage. In the early 1900s, fairy tale plays were huge, and performers like Woodward brought them to life, literally. He didn't just mimic sounds, he studied their movements and behavior, moving across the stage like an owl or waddling like a stork. His act took him to vaudeville circuits, Broadway productions, and eventually Hollywood. Woodward appeared in several films by Wizard of Oz author L. Frank Baum, including The Patchwork Girl of Oz and The Magic Cloak. His mule impression was so well known that he starred in Mule Mates in 1917. Today, animal impersonation might seem like a gag, but back then it was a skill, almost a transformation. Fred wasn't just pretending. He created full characters out of fur, feathers, and instinct. And he didn't speak much on stage. Number 8. Susie the Bengal Tiger. Susie was a 6-year-old Bengal tiger traveling with Feld Entertainment, headed from Florida to a Tennessee airport in 2017. She never made it. Somewhere near Atlanta, Susie escaped from the transport truck. No one noticed she was gone until the truck reached its destination. By then, she was loose in a suburb of Stockbridge, chasing a dog through someone's backyard. Police were called. When they couldn't contain her, they opened fire. Susie died on the spot. The tiger hadn't hurt anyone, but in that moment, she was just another threat to eliminate. PETA responded immediately, saying this wasn't an isolated case. Other animals under Feld's care had died in cages, overheated trucks, or worse. Susie had been on her way to a German circus when she died in an American street. Her life was transport, cages, and orders. Her death? Quick, confused, and public. People remember the video. The company called it a rare accident. But for Susie, the story was never rare. It was tragic. All right, now let's move to number 7. Mademoiselle Ella Zoyara. Omar Kingsley was 8 when he ran off to join the circus. He wanted to be a trick rider, but equestrian stars were expected to be women. So he became Mademoiselle Ella Zoyara, a dazzling rider in lace and skirts who never dropped character, even off stage. Audiences adored her. Even King Victor Emmanuel II of Italy was smitten. No one knew she was actually Kingsley. The act worked so well that Kingsley stayed in drag for years, socializing with women in every city, accepting suitors while always keeping a distance. His secret unraveled in Manila after rejecting an officer's advances, which escalated into a brawl and landed Kingsley in jail. There, the truth came out. He retired the skirts, married equestrienne Sally Stickney, and shifted to circus management. Kingsley died on tour in India, likely from smallpox. Long before drag became performance art, he lived it daily, riding horses and society's assumptions at full gallop. Number 6. Toby, the sapient porker. Toby wasn't just a pig. He was a showbiz veteran. In the 19th century, trained pigs like Toby were part of traveling acts that stunned audiences by reading, counting, and solving puzzles. Ricky Jay immortalized them in his book Learned Pigs and Fireproof Women, and Toby was among the brightest. These pigs weren't magical. They were just smart, observant, and very food-motivated. But they grew fast. By 6 months, many weighed over 300 pounds, making acrobatic tricks harder to pull off. Trainer Fred Leslie managed a rotating cast. When one troop got too heavy, he brought in younger pigs to learn by watching the veterans. One night, the retired pigs heard the familiar show music and climbed out of a neighboring farm to reclaim their spotlight, nudging the rookies off the props and stealing back their act. That moment wasn't just funny. It was a weirdly touching tribute to the stubborn heart of performance. Number 5. Arthur Lewes. Arthur lived with neurofibromatosis that covered his face and body with heavy folds of tumor-like tissue. He wasn't hidden away, he was seen. In 1933, he appeared at Ripley's Auditorium in Chicago, where people stared in disbelief. The condition gave him an unforgettable appearance, but Lewes was more than what the crowd saw. He was 42 then, and would go on to live to 97, last reported alive in 1991. Neurofibromatosis had no cure, no treatment back then, and the stigma was massive. For people like Lewes, the sideshow wasn't just exploitation, it was survival. The alternative was isolation, poverty, or institutionalization. On stage, at least, he had a role and a name. Most of his life remains undocumented, but what we do know is this: he showed up. He faced rooms full of stares, lived far longer than anyone expected, and carried a body the world called monstrous, with a quiet, stubborn kind of dignity. Number 4. Catherine Virginia McDonald. Catherine was born in 1910 in Virginia. At first glance, she looked like any other baby, but lodged inside her chest was an undeveloped parasitic twin, a rare and poorly understood condition at the time. Doctors could feel something beneath her rib cage, and X-rays eventually revealed malformed bones, partial limbs, and soft tissue growing inward. Surgery wasn't an option in 1910. Catherine was otherwise healthy, growing up in a modest household with two parents who treated her gently despite the strange condition. But her life was heartbreakingly short. Just after turning 5, she came down with a high fever and trouble breathing. It was tonsillitis, worsened by bronchitis, and she died on December 29, 1915. Her case was later written about in early medical journals as one of the few known parasitic twin anomalies in North America at the time. She never made it to the stage, but her condition became part of medical history. Number 3. Ernie DeFort. Born July 7, 1931, Ernie spent the early part of his life under a cloud of curiosity and concern. Attached to his chest was Len, an undeveloped parasitic twin. The two shared a circulatory system, and Len's partial face and limbs gave the impression of a second boy growing from Ernie's torso. Sideshow promoters gave him several titles, including Two Boys with One Head and Ernie Len, the world's strangest living boy. He toured briefly, displayed at fairs and freak shows, drawing in people fascinated and unsettled. In 1943, when Ernie was around 12, doctors successfully removed Len in a high-risk operation, an extremely rare surgery at the time. Ernie survived and went on to live a quieter life. He was reportedly married later, though most details remain private. His story dropped from the spotlight after the surgery, but his childhood remains one of the more documented cases of parasitic twins in mid-20th century America. Number 2. The Woman with Four Legs. Born in 1869, Louise L. became known as La Dame à quatre jambes, the woman with four legs. 2 were fully functional. The other 2 grew from her pelvis, weighed over 17 pounds, and hung limp but visible. It wasn't a surgical oddity or prosthetic. It was real. Medical literature speculates that her condition was the result of an undeveloped parasitic twin. She didn't live in hiding. Instead, she appeared in circuses and anatomical museums where her body was examined, debated, and turned into a living display. Despite how the public treated her, Louise lived a life far more ordinary than anyone expected. She had 2 daughters, both healthy, both born without deformities. Beyond that, details of her life remain scarce. We don't know when or how she died. But for a time, she stood as both a fascination and a contradiction. A woman with a condition so rare it drew thousands, yet a mother who raised a family like anyone else. Number 1. The Human Caterpillar. Born in 1871 in British Guiana with tetra amelia syndrome, Prince Randian had no limbs, just a torso, head, and astonishing control over both. P.T. Barnum brought him to the U.S. in the 1880s, where he became a sideshow headliner for decades. Randian spoke 4 languages, dressed himself, rolled cigarettes using only his lips, and even shaved. Skills he proudly displayed as proof of independence. Married with children, he lived a surprisingly full domestic life. In 1932, he appeared in the film Freaks, where his cigarette lighting scene remains one of the film's most unforgettable moments. He wore a tube-like outfit on stage, which only heightened the caterpillar effect. Audiences came expecting pity or horror, but many walked away stunned by his skill and humor. He performed into his 60s and passed away in 1934. Prince Randian wasn't just a circus attraction. He was a man who mastered everything they said he couldn't do, all while the world stared. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share it, and subscribe. Thanks for joining us on this journey, and we'll catch you soon in the next one.